following podcast is brought to you by patreon.com/WrestleMedia.ca. Like what you hear? Want more of it ad-free, uncensored, and earlier? Sign up today at patreon.com/WrestleMedia.ca and start getting more for as little as $2 a month.
Lights, camera, action.
Welcome to Ropes to Reels, part of WrestleMedia, where everything is wrestling and wrestling is everything. I'm at Adam Kota. Drew Ferris is not here. Jesse Redden has decided to fill in for him, and I gotta tell you something, Jesse. I appreciate you being here, and I'm really, really ticked off right now.
Why are you really ticked off?
I'll tell you why. Because Drew Ferris picked this movie to watch this week, and then at the last second, he just up and disappears and leaves me to carry the load of this thing all by myself. I'll tell you something. I don't think he even watched the movie. I think he just up and left and did this to pull one over on me. I'm pretty mad at him right now. I'm as mad at him right now as DC fans were at Zack Snyder when this movie came out.
Well, didn't Zack Snyder leave halfway through this?
Kind of, sort of. Yeah, I don't know if it will come up in our fun fact finding a little bit later on, but let's address it now. It wasn't this movie. It was Justice League that he had to leave halfway through due to a very, very tragic happening in his family. I believe it was his daughter who lost her life, and I don't know if it was due to illness or if it was due to something else that was more unfortunate. I don't know. Not that either or is more unfortunate than the other. I shouldn't say that, but you know what I mean. Either way, Joss Whedon was apparently brought on to finish the rest of Justice League at the time.
Yeah, because I remember everyone talking about wanting the Snyder cut, but I couldn't remember if it was this film or if it was another one. So it is another one that we don't need to discuss because DC movies suck.
For the most part, I would agree with that. I thought Wonder Woman was pretty good.
It was all right. I can't say they all sucked because I've enjoyed what I've seen. I didn't hate this movie as much as everyone else in the world hated this movie. I watched it. It was enjoyable. It had some silly parts to it, but I didn't go out and say, "Oh, that was total garbage." So, I enjoyed all the ones that I've watched. Just being a superhero fan myself, they were fun, but nothing more. I wasn't expecting them to be Marvel movies. I was expecting them to be into entertainment, and that's what they were. They were entertainment.
Did you see Shazam?
I did.
What did you think of Shazam? Because I thought Shazam was pretty good too.
Shazam was hilarious. I loved it. It was it was a fantastic movie. I didn't know about all the rest of the Shazam League, so when they all got powers at the end, spoiler alert.
The spoiler alerts don't work retroactively, Jesse.
Well, it does for me. I always look at hindsight.
Oh, okay.
I can see a lot clearer when hindsight's 20/20.
Okay.
So. But yeah, I didn't know about the whole league and everyone else getting powers and stuff. So that came as a nice little surprise that it wasn't just a Shazam movie; it was a Shazam and Company movie. But it was fun. I enjoyed it. They had a good laugh, and I like Zachary Levi. So.
Now, I haven't seen Aquaman, but you saw it recently.
No, I have not yet watched Aquaman. We have it in 4K, and it is on our to-watch list.
Oh, okay.
So it is one of our movies once we get the theater set up in the basement. Now that everything has been settled in the basement, we have our flooring down, and we don't have to worry about flooding. I'm looking forward to setting up the theater room once again and being able to sit back and watch some of these 4K movies in the dark depths of my basement movie theater.
Your personalized cave, your lair, if you will.
Yeah, it's going to be half baby playroom, half recording studio, half theater. So if you can put three halves together.
I was about to say, you put three halves in there, right? Just want to make sure you're aware of that.
I'm a big guy. I like my halves.
That's
I
fair.
have to have more than one half.
So I expect at least a tweet from @KingofCanadaJJ to let us know what you thought of Aquaman. But the point is that we've established there have been some pretty good DC movies. I honestly didn't think Justice League was all that bad, to be honest with you. I know a lot
I didn't either. I for what it was, I enjoyed it. It was a nice coming together of all their characters. It wasn't a super horrible movie. Storyline
super horrible. Because it's a superhero movie.
And I thought it was a nice coming together of everybody. They played it well. Everyone got their moment of shine, and it was decent. So I wasn't a super hater for that one either.
No, I agree 100%. So, there have been some good and some bad. I feel like this movie is probably the most polarizing. I mean, I have known a few whack jobs who were like Suicide Squad was a good movie. By the way, it wasn't. But a lot of people I know did like Dawn of Justice, and I know a lot of people who think it was absolutely awful. So you and I are going to sit down and we're going to talk about which side of the fence we fall on. You kind of gave us a little bit of a preview already, but first, there's a very important question that we need to ask, Jesse, and this one was actually provided by our very own Jeff DeHaan of Forging the Future, who said, "What in the menacing Martha Mayhem does this have to do with professional wrestling?" Which I thought was a nice use of alliteration. Jesse, any guesses as to what this movie, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, has to do with pro wrestling?
I'm curious myself, because sitting down. Now, I haven't watched this movie probably in a few years, so I don't remember every little bit and detail. So, no, I honestly don't know. I'm guessing it was maybe one of the villains who played Doomsday would be my guess. But other than that, I have no idea how this ties into professional wrestling.
Well, I'm going to tell you, and it may actually come as a bit of a surprise. For those of you who follow the Detroit wrestling scene or were fans of BCW back in the day, you may be surprised to learn that a guy by the name of Eddie Venom had a very small role in this film as a police officer for, I believe it was one of the Metropolis police officers. Now, there are no small roles, only small actors, and certainly in the case of Eddie, neither is true, because he is not a small man by any means. So, if you are a fan of Eddie Venom, there you go. There's one of his claims to fame. He was part of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice as a Metropolis cop. There you have it. That is our connection to pro wrestling. A small connection, but a connection nonetheless. So there you have it.
It seems like we're stretching a little, but okay.
That's not a stretch. He's a pro wrestler, and he's in the movie. Nothing ever said in the criteria for this show that it had to be a huge connection or that, the guy had to be a main event player. I mean, look, we watched Black Panther because Shad Gaspar did some stunt work, and I think he even got cut out of the film, but he still worked on it, and it's still a connection.
Okay, yep.
That's how
I know Eddie. I worked with Eddie Venom way back in the early 2000s, so that's kind of interesting to hear.
All right, well, that's great then. I'm glad that you know who he is then. That's a fantastic news. For those of you who are looking...
Now I have to go back and watch it just to see where he is as a Metropolis cop.
For those of you interested in finding out what other work Eddie has done, and therefore what other movies or shows we may review featuring him, he goes by his... I'm assuming it's his shoot name, but it could also be a stage name, J.R. Adams. If you want to look up his IMDb, that's actually what I'm looking at right now. He's got a bunch of stunt credits, including stuff like The Punisher, Ray Donovan, Blue Bloods. So these are all shows that we could watch, which would be kind of cool. Acting credits, he's got a whole bunch of them, including, as we said, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and a couple of other movies that, well, I'm not going to quite reveal just yet because, well, we'll get there. You know the idea. So we'll just say thanks for being in this one, Eddie, because that means we got a chance to review this film, for better or for worse. Jesse, did you see Man of Steel? Because we kind of have to talk about Man of Steel if we're going to be talking about Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice.
Yes, I have seen Man of Steel.
And what's your opinion on Man of Steel, the movie?
I enjoyed it. It was a nice retelling of Superman. It was for the people that kind of didn't know who he was. Like, you have to live under a rock not to know who Superman is.
Right.
But it was a nice telling of how, the story of Clark as a young boy, how he lost his father once again. All these superheroes seem to lose somebody.
It's almost as if it's kind of like a prerequisite to being a superhero.
Yeah, you got to lose a parent or both of them. One parent or both of them in some tragic accident. And then that makes you a superhero.
And actually, that's kind of how we start the movie. So I guess we can just jump into it right there and talk about it from there. So 18 months after the battle between Superman and General Zod in Metropolis, Superman has become a controversial figure. And this all kind of starts with the film that opens up on Bruce Wayne. We see the fight between Superman and General Zod from his point of view. Now, I really liked them opening up the movie this way because I thought it was really neat to go back to Man of Steel to show the battle from a different perspective, but also because there was a lot of criticism levied against Man of Steel for the amount of destruction that Superman and Zod caused in Metropolis, saying that...
Yeah, the collateral damage and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought it was a really interesting way for them to take that criticism of the last film and say, well, let's just address it right up front. What did you think of the opening, and what did you think of Ben Affleck portraying Bruce Wayne?
He did all right. It was definitely not my first and most favorite Bruce Wayne pick, but he played the character all right. He is this stuffy rich guy, and so he played a stuffy rich guy quite well.
What did you think of him as Batman as opposed to Bruce Wayne?
The Batman character was okay. He wasn't as dark and brooding as most Batman are. So, but then again, the bar was set pretty low when we got Bat Nips with George Clooney. So,
well, if I'm not mistaken, you and I actually talked about Batman and Robin on an episode of Ropes to Reels before. So if you want to hear us talk more about the Bat Nips, go back and check that out in the archives at WrestleMedia.ca.
I enjoyed him as Batman. He did an all right job. I enjoyed the actual third person view of seeing all this catastrophe and having the Wayne Enterprise building get destroyed. And that's kind of like, hey, they were killing people, but as soon as he took down my building, that's enough. I've had it with him.
All right, so then we go. I'm not sure if I'm following this in order, so if I'm not, I apologize. But right after that, I should say that we opened up. I should have said that we opened up the movie with the death of Batman's parents, because we do. That's what technically opens up the film. But then we cut to the destruction of Metropolis. They go back, and I got to tell you something. It's one of those things where you're watching it and then you're like, wait, is Jeffrey Dean Morgan in this movie? And he plays Thomas Wayne, and I really liked him as that.
And I can't remember her name, but the girl that plays Maggie from Walking Dead plays his mother.
Oh, really? I didn't even notice that.
So there's two Walking Dead alumni who end up playing the parents of Bruce Wayne. That's
so funny. And I have to
I wish I could remember her name. I can't for the life of me. But
I remember
she plays Maggie.
It was such a surprise for me to see a guy like Jeffrey Dean Morgan there. Although I suppose I shouldn't be that surprised. I mean, Zack Snyder did Watchmen, and of course Jeffrey Dean Morgan was a big part of that film. So having him,
comedian,
as part of it, I guess would have been kind of interesting. So, and a lot of people feel like the comedian was kind of like a prototype for the Dark Knight that we got in the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns series, which a lot of people, clearly I should say, this film took a lot of inspiration from. So maybe there's a little bit of an underlying meaning to that, or maybe I'm just looking too much into it. Either way, It
was also like Zack Snyder has his own way of doing things, right?
Sure.
So everyone, I always know Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Supernatural, Mr. Winchester. That's where I know him from.
Oh, okay. See, I'm not familiar.
He was Sam and Dean's dad. Sam and Dean's daddy.
Okay, I see.
So,
all right.
John Winchester. He never made it out of the first season. Spoiler alert.
Now, the only reason I bring up the death of Batman's parents is because that will come into play in a very big way coming up towards the climax. Hey, this is a commercial for patreon.com/WrestleMedia.ca, where you can get early access to episodes of your favorite WrestleMedia shows, get full uncut and uncensored versions of your favorite shows, and more. Don't want to hear this commercial on your podcast anymore? Sign up at our main event tier and get these episodes ad-free. Want to hear your own commercial here instead of ours? We've got tiers for that too. Visit patreon.com/WrestleMedia.ca and join the WrestleMedia revolution today. Now, when it comes to the actual rest of the film itself, we learn that Clark Kent is not a big fan of Batman and the vigilante work that he's been doing. What did you think of them portraying Batman as a vicious hero in this? Because a lot of people had a big problem with Batman killing people and being just generally...
he didn't kill anybody.
Well, I mean, he uses guns in it. He mows down a bunch of guys with the gun, doesn't he not? And then, I mean, let's be honest.
No.
All that stuff he did with the Batmobile for sure killed some people. Come on.
No. He never on screen killed anybody. He may have smashed some guy's face into the ground and broken his neck and probably shattered most of his bones, but he didn't kill anybody. Batman doesn't kill. But I do understand. I think a lot of people were upset that it made it look like he was killing people.
Sure. What was your take on it?
I thought he was super aggressive and knocking the crap out of people, and I was assuming that they weren't dying. He was just hospitalizing a whole lot of people.
Sure.
So I live in my own little bubble of Batman doesn't kill people.
Okay. Now let's get to another one of the main characters, Lex Luthor. So first and foremost, when it was announced that Jesse Eisenberg was going to be cast as Lex Luthor, what was your reaction to the casting?
I was interested to see what he was going to do with it.
Me too.
Because remember, Gene Hackman was Lex Luthor. So, we can have many different people play him. And like even weirder is having the 2.5 Men John Cryer cast as Lex Luthor in the television series. So it all depends on what they do with it. I was interested to see, and I'm not going to say that he did a bad job. He wasn't villainous enough for my taste.
I will say this. I was excited when they announced Eisenberg because I think he's a tremendous actor. And I was really interested to see what he did with the character as well, because I knew that he would probably do something different with it simply because, first of all, of his age and whatnot. And boy, howdy, did he ever do something different with it. Now, a lot of people didn't like him in it. I didn't mind him. I thought the performance was different. He made some choices for sure. They say that acting is just choices. Well, boy, howdy, he made some choices. For better or for worse, it depends upon what you want to see in Lex Luthor. I just wanted to see an evil genius. I didn't really care about the eccentricities and the Jolly Rancher stuff. I understand why people thought it was kind of silly and goofy, because it was, but I respect that he looked at it and said, I want to do something different. I don't want to do the same thing that everyone else was doing. And honestly, there were times in this movie where I think he was brilliant. And we're going to get to that in just a little bit, but I wanted to quickly just touch on Jesse Eisenberg and his performance and things of that nature. Okay, so let's start off by talking about some stuff that we liked about the movie and stuff we didn't like about the movie. So what are some of the things about the movie that you really liked? Or was there like some particular scenes that really stood out for you? What were some of the positives about Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice for you personally, Jesse?
Oh, yeah. Now you're asking the hard questions.
Well, why don't I start with one, and then maybe it'll help jog your memory a little bit. Because the first thing I want to talk about, I had mentioned Batman killing people with the Batmobile and everything, but I will tell you this. That Batmobile scene is one of the coolest Batmobile scenes in all of Batman's cinema history, as far as I'm concerned. I'll tell you something. I know a lot of people go nuts for the Batmobile. I never really cared about the Batmobile. I always thought it was, a cool car, but there was never a movie with Batman in it where I was like, oh man, when is he going to, do something in the Batmobile? It's so cool. I want to see what it looks like, blah, blah, blah. This movie made me excited about the Batmobile because when I watched that scene, I was into it. I was really digging what they were doing. Zack Snyder, say what you will about the guy, but he knows how to shoot action. And boy, oh boy, I thought that Batmobile scene was one of the most exciting scenes in the entire movie. So, again, killing people or not, boy howdy, that Batmobile scene was kind of awesome. So that was one of the things I liked about it for sure.
I like the introduction to Wonder Woman.
Yes.
This was our first time getting her on screen. So they made her powerful. They made her sensual. They made her a really strong woman character.
Yeah, I agree.
Who didn't play backup to anybody. She was there. She fought well. So I really enjoyed how she was introduced into the DC universe because we all knew that she was going to be getting a movie, and having her come in and get her part. I enjoyed the way she was packaged in this movie.
I think easily the best character in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice is Wonder Woman. Like she has the most kick-ass moment. The music score that they give her when she is on screen is awesome, which is another thing I want to bring up that I really love. Hans Zimmer, great score on all of these superhero films. I love Hans Zimmer as a composer, so he did another great job with this for sure. But yeah, Wonder Woman was the most badass character, and by the time she got there, it was like, oh god, finally! I've been waiting for her to come out this entire film. Now, that being said, the introduction of the other members of the Justice League maybe not handled as well as Wonder Woman.
They're just scrolling icons on Lex's screen. So
not just that, but like this movie, is 151 minutes. So it's over two.
And that depends on if you're watching the original or the extended edition.
Right. But even still, that's a long time for a movie. And this movie was a long movie, and not like Avengers Endgame long, where it's like it's 3 hours, but it don't feel like 3 hours. You felt a lot of those minutes during this runtime. And then to just kind of haphazardly shoehorn a 5-minute scene where it's like essentially just showing you a teaser for the Justice League and all of these other solo movies, which of course now may or may not happen.
Right.
Boy, oh boy, it was a bad decision on their part to do that. I know that they were just trying to get fans excited, but it's clear that moments like this were an early tip-off that DC was just more interested in building their universe rather than making a good movie. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is unfortunate. Stuff like
that's one thing that Marvel's always done better is they've made good movies with the story going forward.
Yeah. And I mean, it shows. It definitely shows, and now you've got that dream sequence that Bruce had, which of course now will probably never pay off. We had the stuff with, him imagining Superman as like a dictator, which I don't know if that means that they were building towards an injustice story or what the deal was, but either way.
That would have been awesome.
I agree. But we're never going to get it. Never going to happen now. I do want to talk about something I did like, which is Lex Luthor's speech, where he finally kidnaps Martha Kent, and he's having the big supervillain moment on top of the building where he's explaining his evil plan, which is, cliched and dumb, but I loved Eisenberg's performance in it. And honestly, to me, that's the moment in the movie where it gets interesting. Like that for me, everything from that point on to me, I really like about Batman v Superman. I think it's a lot of fun at that point in time, and it becomes a real superhero movie. Everything up to it, plotting. Like, I was just couldn't wait for us to get.
I was going to say, if we're talking about things we don't like, or have we got to don't like yet?
Oh, no. We're just throwing in what we like, what we don't like. We're just kind of just chatting.
Doomsday.
Yeah. What wasted potential.
It was. Like, they had no reason to make him a Zod resurrection and this, that. Like, they could have, if they wanted to do Doomsday right, they could have done him right. Like, that was a kick in the face to everyone that knew Doomsday and everyone that enjoyed, like, comic book stories and stuff. They had no reason to put him in there the way they put him in there. He could have easily have been an alien that came in on a asteroid and all this other stuff. And if you want a good Doomsday movie, watch the animated movie that they do. And I'm trying to remember. I want to say it's The Death of Superman.
I believe that's what it's called as well, actually. But it's weird because it feels like every form of media that introduces Doomsday does it in a different way. You had the animated film, which was different from the comic book, and then you have this movie, which is different from the comic book and the animated film. So who knows? I don't know if they've ever introduced him on Smallville or on any of the other Superman.
They did.
Oh, okay. Was it different from any of those other ones?
Yeah, because he ended up being like a regular human.
Well, there you go. So Doomsday has had a lot of different origin stories, essentially, almost as many as Batman. So
but yeah, the Doomsday was not a good thing. But
no.
Another thing I didn't like for this one was the darkness of the film. And I realized that they were trying to keep it dark and dreary, but I still remember watching it in the theater saying, this is hard to watch because it was very, very dark in color. That's one thing Marvel always is 10 steps ahead, is they keep, even if their movie is dark toned, they keep it bright and vibrant.
Well, I think Infinity War was a really good example of that. Even when, we have this really kind of dreary emotion hanging over the entire film, they make sure to switch it up every now and then with a lot of colorful palettes. And yeah, you're right. The cinematography in this, or at least the color grading, God, it really needed some work to even bring it up to a decent kind of look to the film. It wasn't great, which is why a lot of people feel like Justice Leagues look like it's been recolored, because I think there was a lot of that same fear from Warner Brothers. Now, I'm going to go on record as saying I liked the recoloring in Justice League. I liked that it was a lot brighter and shinier.
Yeah, I thought it should have been, definitely, because you got a whole group of people. You have to have it. You got to be able to see what's going on. Just because it's a Batman movie doesn't mean it has to be filmed in black and white.
Which brings me to, I think, my biggest problem with the film, and it's really a problem with Zack Snyder as a whole, but especially when it relates to the Superman character, which is that Zack Snyder doesn't understand Superman at all. I don't think he understood him in Man of Steel. I don't think he understood him in this. I think really he just wanted to make a Batman movie, and now he got his opportunity to do so, because I feel like all the things that Superman does in this movie are not Superman things. Like Superman, no. The only thing I liked about Superman in this movie was that small montage we got of him going out and doing good things all over the world. I wanted to see more of that. Where was that Superman for like the last couple of years? I don't know where he's been, but we need more of that Superman, because that is Superman right there. And we got very, very little of that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, because even in Man of Steel, all the choices he made were not Superman choices. And the fact that Superman would kill Batman and just killing somebody, like, Superman doesn't kill people. He's like Batman. They're not supposed to kill people. Superman is super. He was always found another way. He could grab a railway tie and tie you up and wait for the police. Now, mind you, that would probably crush you, being tied up by a railway tie. but he doesn't care. He just ties you up and you live. And then the police come and pick you up. That was Superman. And going around the world, hearing everybody yelling for help. He'd be there in a flash. Pun intended.
Before we move on to some of the other stuff, I do want to just quickly go over one or two other things. I want to talk about the death of Superman. When I first watched the movie, it was really cool to see that story played out. But very quickly, I came to realize that the reason I don't think it impacted me the way I was hoping it was going to was because the movie didn't earn the death of Superman, especially after just one other film. I thought it was really rushed, and it feels like maybe Zack Snyder, and this is just purely speculation on my part, but my view of it, what it felt like to me as a fan watching, was Zack Snyder looked at the contracts and was like, okay, I have X number of movies, and I want to tell this story, and this story from the comics in those 3 movies. So we're going to have to rush some of this together, and we're going to have to kind of blend this. And, he got to tell basically the 2 most famous superhero stories from DC. He got to tell the death of Superman, and he got to do the Dark Knight Returns. And unfortunately, I don't think he really nailed either of them.
No, he squandered both of them. He should have turned Batman versus Superman should have been 2 separate movies.
Yeah, I would have been okay with that.
And the Superman versus Batman. So they should have been 2 separate movies, not one.
I can't disagree with you on that one at all. Of course, we got to talk about one last thing, and that's Martha. A lot of people think this is kind of like...
Why'd you say that name?
Because a lot of people point to this as kind of the moment where the movie falls apart. Now, I personally didn't think it was that bad. Again, in the moment,
I thought it was kind of corny.
Yeah,
that's what stops the fight. Why'd you say my mother's name? It's my mother. Your mother? Oh, well, let's go have some tea. We both love Martha.
Did you see Teen Titans Go to the Movies?
I do believe I've watched it. No, I haven't, but I haven't watched it. Okay,
so when you watch that film, you will see there is a fantastic gag that makes fun of that scene in the movie, and it had me in stitches in the movie theater when I watched it. By the way, if anybody who's listening to this hasn't seen Teen Titans Go to the Movies, please do yourself a favor and go watch it. It's absolutely ridiculous, but it was one of my favorite movies of last year because it was so silly and stupid. But it knows it's silly.
We have Teen Titans Go to the Movies, but we haven't watched it yet.
Well, watch that one when you're feeling like a laugh, because you'll definitely have some good chuckles at the silliness of that one. All right, Jesse, anything else that you want to kind of mention or talk about, good or bad, before we give our final rating on the movie?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything up and down about it, like at least in our opinions. We're not saying it was a horrible movie, and we're not saying it was a super good movie. It was enjoyable. It was a movie. So
all right,
he didn't hit he didn't hit a home run, but he kept it in the field. It wasn't a movie I'd walk out of, but it definitely wouldn't be one. I'm actually interested to going back and watching it again to see how well it's aged, but I don't know if I want to sit down through 3 or 2.5 hours of it.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to see it again, just to see if it really was as horrible as people said it was. Because like I said, for me, I didn't think it was super horrible. I enjoyed it. It kept my attention. Yes, there was some silly and corniness to it, but that's what you kind of expect in superhero movies.
I think, I'll get to my review in a second. How would you rate this movie? Would you rate it as a jobber, as a mid-carder, or as a main eventer?
It's definitely a mid-card.
So like somewhere in between.
It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't super perfect either. It was so if you had a kid who enjoyed superhero movies, it could be one you sit him down to watch because he won't care about all the plot holes and the crap in the middle. Maybe having him watch Batman kill people.
Not so good.
Probably not the greatest idea, but I'm sure they have a PG version of that film out by now. So,
well, I'm sure PureFlix has probably done some sort of scrubbing of it for sure. I agree with you on a lot of points, and I do think that the biggest problem with with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice is it's just too damn long. It's just too long. If they had cut out so much of that film, I think you could have had a much better movie, which is funny because so many people have said the Snyder cut is better, and it adds another 20 or 40 minutes to it. I don't know how long it is, and that surprises me because I felt like one of the biggest problems was that there was just so much being crammed in there that was really unnecessary. So I was not a big fan of that.
Sorry, the version that I watched was the extended version because I heard people say that there were plot holes in the original.
Yeah.
And I guess this one fixed the plot holes. And that was the version that I watched. So I didn't see that it was horrible or like there were bits and pieces missing from the story because I guess I watched the version that had the entire story that was supposed to be told.
Okay.
So, and like I said, I enjoyed it. So I didn't walk away from it going, oh, well, this was horrible, missing pieces or full of holes. But the reviews that people had for it afterwards were the fact that it was missing a whole lot of the story. So maybe that's why I liked it better than most because I didn't feel like it was missing all those chunks because I watched the extended version.
Sure. Maybe that's it. Maybe I have to watch the extended version to get away from that, but I don't necessarily know that it would fix my problems with the film, which were primarily in the first half of the movie. I felt everything.
Well, yeah, no, oh, go ahead. I was going to say, I agree that it is definitely too long. It's two movies that are stuck together that didn't necessarily have to be there.
Yeah, there's not a lot of cohesion in the stories whatsoever, and there's a lot of convenience and plot contrivances as opposed to plot holes that I think were really just unnecessary. Now, that being said, although I really didn't like the first half of the movie, I enjoyed the hell out of the second half of the movie, and I've been quoted as saying that I feel like the first half of Batman v Superman is maybe the worst superhero ever made, and that possibly the last half is the best superhero movie ever made. And what I mean by I say that is that I feel like once it gets to Lex Luthor's speech and we get to the actual superheroic stuff, it's a good, fun little romp. Kind of mindless. If you turn your brain off to it, it can be enjoyable. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not a good movie at all in terms of plot structure and overall, it's not a really great film. However, that being said, I did enjoy that last half quite a bit, and maybe it was enough to make me forget how bad the first half was. But because of that, I do also have to give it a mid-card ranking. It just wasn't that great of a movie. I think I would still, I don't know if I would recommend it, but I would say that if you skip to the Lex Luthor speech and just watch it even out of context, it's not really going to make a difference. It's not going to enhance the movie. So I would say I recommend it, but only if you start it from Lex Luthor's speech.
Well, yeah, what we have to do is we have to see somebody make an edit of this movie and have it cut to just being Batman versus Superman and take out all the Doomsday stuff, or have them do it as a Death of Superman and get rid of all the filler crap that they didn't need and bring it down to an hour and a half of a good, tight movie. That's what maybe someday if I'm adventurous, I'll make a reddened recut of Dawn of Justice.
I would love to see that. Patrons, you have your marching papers in terms of giving us enough money that we can get that project going, because I would sure love to see that. When it comes to next week's episode of Ropes to Reels, well, it's my choice, and I'm going to take a look back at one of the first ever Marvel films to really make an impact. No, not X-Men. We've already covered that on this show. Not Spider-Man. We've done that too. So what's next? Well, a movie that some feel is the absolute best in the series, and at least for one other host on this network, they say it's the worst. And I'm hopefully going to get them to guest star with me next week, since you were nice enough to do it this week, Jesse. Next week, I tackle the unenviable sequel to X-Men, X2. So we're going to check that one out next week. We invite you to come along and join us for that. Until then, thank you for listening to the podcast on however you choose to do so. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon. If you do put some ducats in the bucket, we really appreciate that. If you can't support us financially, share us as much as you can, and go ahead and give us a nice 5-star rating and review if your particular podcast provider allows you to do that sort of thing. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at WrestleMedia.ca so you can be up to date with the latest news, and you can get yourself in on this cool contest we have right now where we're giving away a pair of passes to the Chinlock Wrestling event on June 15th. We're going to be there, and we want you to be there too. In the meantime, Jesse, I want to thank you once again for being on the show with me today. I hope you had as much fun ripping apart this movie as I did.
Of course. I had always lots of fun talking with you, and I enjoy talking superheroes, and I enjoy talking to the people that pay us to do so. So it was fun, and let's not do it again anytime soon.
And with that, I'm at Adam Conta. That's Jesse Redden. And when it comes to Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, that's a wrap.
This has been a presentation of WrestleMedia, where everything is wrestling and wrestling is everything.
Here's what you're missing out on right now over at patreon.com/WrestleMedia.ca.
I've already gone through half of a drink here tonight.
So
maybe that's why I'm yelling at the phone.
Well, then maybe when you get to the end of it, then we'll know it's time to wrap up the podcast.
When I start telling them that I've stripped down to my Batman underpants.
Jesse.
Actually, it's Batman versus Superman. They meet in the middle in the dark hole, and there's usually a big fight that goes on.
Oh, my God.
My kryptonite pops out every once in a while.
Oh, no. Want more? Sign up now at patreon.com/WrestleMedia.ca.